Well, I guess I should have made the video as I went along, but I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. But it turned out really good, so now I'll make a video and tell you guys what I did. This is a, I don't know, sloppy blackberry pie, cobbler, whatever you want to call it. I only have one pre-made pie crust. Normally you have two in a box. Somehow I used one years ago, and ever since then I've always had an odd one in a box. So I only had one. So I rolled it out as much as I could, put it in the bottom of the pan here, and then the excess that I had left over, I just cut those little strips and put in there just for some extra crunch or flavor. Anyway, for the recipe, what I used was, this was a recipe that I got from my mother-in-law, from her mother-in-law, I believe, but I modified it a little bit. So we've got, their recipe is 1.25 cups of sugar, I put 1.5 cups. 1/4 cup of flour, I put 1/2 because sloppy, runny blackberry pies irritate me. So I put a little bit more flour in there, trying to thicken it up. I cut out the salt, didn't put it in, and then 4 cups of blackberries. Now the way I've been freezing my blackberries is just freezing them in a quart jar, because that makes it easy. You know, you've got your 4 cups of blackberries right there in each quart jar. But mix your flour, sugar, salt if you want it, and blackberries all together in a bowl. It's best if you have them thawed first. Mine were not thawed, they were still frozen when I mixed them, so I defrosted them real quick in the microwave. But I did, like I said, I did a little bit differently than what the recipe calls for. The recipe tells you dump all that mix into your pie crust, and then they recommend putting aluminum foil on the edges, so they would have, you know, crust in the bottom, berries, crust on top, poke it with a fork, and then put aluminum foil all the way around the edge. That helps keep your edge from burning while the rest of your pie bakes. Well, I did have the second crust, so I just dumped all the blackberries in the bottom crust. I put the foil on the edge for what it was worth, and then I just threw it in the oven. Now, what I did when I was preparing the blackberries, since they were still frozen, I was afraid that if I just threw them in the oven, that they would be frozen and the crust would burn before the blackberries got hot all the way through. So I poured the blackberries, sugar, and flour mix all into a pot and stirred it and kind of steamed it until it was until it was hot all the way through. So that kind of pre-cooked things, it got them hot ahead of time. Make sure you stir it very, very well, because you're also going to burn all that sugar to the bottom of your pan, which I did, so the pan is still soaking. But once that was heated up and thoroughly mixed, then I dumped it into the pie crust, put the aluminum foil on, threw the whole thing in the oven, and for only 20 minutes. So the original recipe I have says 20 minutes with aluminum foil on, then 20 minutes with it off. I did it just for 20 minutes total. And when I pulled it out, the crust was already crispy brown like this, despite the foil. And I could see that the mixture was boiling. So I knew that it was definitely cooked all the way through. I wasn't worried about that. So I said, you know what? Pull it out, cool it, let's see what happened. And it turned out exceptional. And not only is it delicious, yeah, that's delicious. But you can see, it's not runny. It's just the right consistency, nice and gooey, not hard, not set up like a jelly, but not soupy either. So I really like that. Had a little bit for dessert at my lunch, had to test it out, of course. A little scoop of vanilla ice cream, and it was excellent. So I'll put the details on the recipe in the comments below, but y'all give it a shot. It only uses one crust, so save a little bit of money on pie crust. And it saved me 20 minutes worth of baking time, and I think everything about it's excellent, so I might give it a shot.